Right now, Southern Europe is facing a truly devastating situation, and honestly, we all need to pay close attention. In today's Explainer, we're unpacking the breaking news out of Spain, a horrific wildfire that's basically gripped the southeastern province of Almeria. But to truly understand what's happening on the ground right this second, we can't just look at this as some isolated incident. We have to view it as part of a much larger, incredibly urgent continental shift. The data we have is just staggering, and it paints a picture of a very fiery new reality for Europe. Here's how we're going to break this down. First, the tragedy in southern Spain. Second, Europe's worsening wildfires. Third, breaking temperature records. Fourth, the climate change connection. And fifth, our fiery future. Okay, part one, tragedy in southern Spain, looking at the devastation in Los Gallardos. We really need to start by grounding ourselves in the human reality of this event. Authorities have confirmed the tragic loss of 12 lives in the Los Gallardos wildfire. 12. And the details emerging are just deeply distressing. Reports indicate that some of the victims were actually found inside their vehicles, just suddenly overtaken by these incredibly fast-moving flames. It is a stark, terrifying reminder of how rapidly these fires can move and the immediate danger they pose to people just trying to live their lives. 6 others have also been injured, treated for things like severe smoke inhalation and burns. Juanma Moreno, who is the head of the Andalusian regional government, really captured the profound grief on the ground. He called the deaths a tragedy, stating publicly, "Our hearts are heavy and we are devastated by grief." As we dig into the data and the science of these events, which we'll do in just a second, it's absolutely crucial that we never lose sight of this human cost. These aren't just statistics. These are entirely shattered communities. So, how exactly does a disaster of this magnitude even start? Well, witnesses are reporting the initial trigger was likely a downed power line. Now, a downed power line is definitely dangerous, but under normal conditions, it might just cause a localized, manageable brush fire. But these were definitely not normal conditions. That spark met a sustained heat wave with temperatures hovering right around 40 degrees Celsius, which is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. That intense heat essentially turned the nearby wooded area into an absolute tinderbox, allowing the blaze to spread with terrifying speed. Because of that speed, the scale of the threat required an absolutely massive emergency response. We're talking 1,000 residents rapidly evacuated, with local roads completely shut down to get people to safety. In just the small hamlet of Baydar alone, about 150 firefighters were deployed to fight the flames. It actually escalated to the point where Spain's military emergency unit, this highly specialized force deployed only in major national emergencies, had to step in. It aligns with what Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez pledged back in May, that Spain would be forced to deploy its largest ever summer wildfire response this year. And unfortunately, that pledge is now reality. Moving to part two, Europe's worsening wildfires, a true continental crisis. The crucial point here is that Spain isn't fighting this battle alone, not even close. Right now, over in France, hundreds of firefighters are battling major incidents. In Portugal, thousands of people have literally been forced to flee their homes. And of course, in Spain, we have military deployment and tragic loss of life. We are essentially looking at a sustained heatwave that's holding all of Southern Europe hostage, sparking simultaneous crises across multiple borders. And to really grasp this, we have to place his current crisis in its immediate historical context. This isn't just an anomaly that popped out of nowhere. Last year, that was the European Union's worst wildfire season since records began in 2006. Think about the sheer scale of this for a second. Over 1 million hectares burned across the EU. To visualize that, that is an area roughly half the size of Wales, simply wiped out by fire. The fires we're seeing right now are a direct continuation of this incredibly destructive, record-breaking trend. Which brings us to part 3, breaking temperature records, the data behind the flames. Let's track the temperature data, because it's really the hidden engine driving these infernos. Back in June 1950, we had our previous historical benchmarks for heat. But skip forward to June 2026, the time frame of our source data, and Spain officially reached its highest daily average temperature since that 1950 benchmark. They actually recorded days with the highest ever temperatures for the month of June, and the immediate forecast, it's offering zero relief, with temperatures expected to spike as high as 42 degrees Celsius or 107.6 degrees Fahrenheit in some parts of the country. The baseline for what's considered hot in Europe is radically shifting upward. The direct result of that shifting baseline is honestly staggering. If you look at the historical average for Spanish wildfires from 2006 to 2024, it absolutely pales in comparison to last year's total destruction. We're talking 393,000 hectares burned in Spain alone last year. That is more than 6 times the historical average. 6 times. The data makes it undeniably clear that the environment has fundamentally changed, creating these conditions where fires don't just spark, they explode into catastrophic events.
Let's look at part 4, the climate change connection, the root cause.
So why is all this happening? According to the Copernicus Climate Service, climate change is obviously driving up temperatures all around the world. But the critical takeaway here is that Europe is actually the fastest warming continent on the planet. When you compare the global average warming rate to Europe's, Europe is heating up twice as fast as the rest of the world. It is the absolute epicenter of this rapid temperature acceleration, making it uniquely vulnerable to the extreme weather events we're witnessing right now. And look, this isn't just some loose correlation. It is a scientifically established link. The World Weather Attribution Group, which is this highly respected team of experts based at Imperial College London, they specifically study extreme weather events. In a separate study, they have directly and scientifically linked this worsening Mediterranean fire season to climate change. They're essentially bridging the gap between macro global carbon emissions and the very real, very deadly fires burning in places like Los Gallardos today. Which leads us to part 5, our fiery future, adapting to the new normal. Europe is essentially trapped in a vicious, continuous chain reaction right now. Step 1, the rapidly warming continent experiences increased, incredibly sustained summer heat waves. Step 2, this intense heat bakes the land and puts immense, unprecedented pressure on Europe's water supply, completely drying out the vegetation. Step 3, boom, this creates the perfect dry fuel for more intense, totally uncontrollable wildfires. And then the cycle just repeats, often with greater severity each time around. We really have to listen to what the scientific community is telling us here. The stark warning from experts across the board is that without massive, systemic changes, more frequent and severe fires across Europe are likely to just keep continuing. This is not a temporary bad season, it is the trajectory of the continent's climate. The tragedy in Andalusia, the mass evacuations in France and Portugal, sadly, these are previews of the years to come if the underlying drivers remain unchecked. So I want to leave you with a provocative question to really chew on. Knowing that Europe is warming twice as fast as the rest of the globe, how must European nations radically adapt their infrastructure, their emergency services, and their water supplies to actually survive this explosive new normal? Because the fires are already here. The question now is how society will rise to meet them. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring the data on this truly critical issue.